Hello, Formula One fans. This is CPEZ, Corey Pesaturo, normally known for playing accordion around the world, but also an F1 nut, as I have been since I was 2 years old. So today, we need to go over the run that Max Verstappen is on, because there's so much other news out there, like there were decades ago, where we are missing on the fact of what Max Verstappen has been doing the past 2 years, and a little more actually than 2 years, as I will show. That this is a completely historic run, and it has felt that way since the beginning of this year and throughout, but too many people focus on what happened at the end of the championship in 2021 or other antics. People think he's too aggressive still, which I think is complete blasphemy, especially the same people that are Senna fans think Max is too aggressive. Have you ever watched anything in the 80s or 90s? And then, of course, what happened in Brazil just a couple of weeks ago in 2022. And you're missing out on the fact of what Max Verstappen is doing is so unbelievably historic. And we need to go over that and then put it in context to history and see where is Max Verstappen already truly ranking in the greatest drivers of all time, because people constantly, especially new fans, they just look at the numbers. Well, how many wins, how many poles, how many championships? And then people that try to act smart, well, no, you have to do the percentages, which is far better than the actual pure wins and pure championships. So you have to look at the percentages. Sure. But you have to dive much deeper than even that, because it depends on at what time you're at what team and teammates and so many other aspects of it. But we'll all break that down. Let's first look at this run that Max is on, which goes through the very last race and still could continue next year, but who knows if Red Bull is going to be as good next year. But through Abu Dhabi 2022, the run, you can put it back to Bahrain in 2020, where he finishes second. Then, as you know, they stay in Bahrain and call it the Sakir Grand Prix, the next race. That is the race where he was crashed out in the first lap. Unavoidable crash, did what he could. Leclerc was involved in that. Nothing he could do. So that, it counts in my data as a no start when you do the full-on statistics of someone's career. And then, of course, he won Abu Dhabi 2020. Sakir 2020 is also the race where George Russell should have won twice. Not once. He should have won the race twice and had just terrible luck one after another.
Okay, George, we're going to need to box. You have a mixed tyre set on the car. Basically, what's happened is they've got some of Bottas's tyres on. Looks like a rear puncture. That's George Russell's chance.
That's where Perez won, and then he ends up getting the Red Bull job and completely changes 2021. So much history happened in that Sakir Grand Prix. But that's a race where I said, I don't believe so much in Lewis Hamilton. If a kid can just jump into the Mercedes that he's been in, dominating the world since 2014, and just come into it, he doesn't fit in the seat, doesn't understand the steering wheel, has the best pass I've ever seen put on Bottas over Hamilton.
Wider through turn 4. Russell's now going to have a go at him on this twisty section of the track, the middle section. He's got the inside line at turn 7, and he goes past his teammate.
That little kink right-left in Sakir. And should have won the race twice. Was incredibly fast all weekend. It's like if a kid can just jump in and do that. Yes, Bottas is not that good. And almost anyone that's of high quality could do what Hamilton was doing over all these years. That was a massive blow to Hamilton's legacy. And if people didn't believe me, I said, well, let's see. If George gets in the car next year, which he should have, he waited till 2022, I bet George could keep up with Hamilton. Hell, he might even beat him. Well, 22 races, 2022, Hamilton lost. He lost. And even if he didn't go out in the last race without that retirement, he still was going to lose. So, and Russell had to win. Hamilton didn't. Russell had a pole. Hamilton didn't. Hamilton fans just don't want to accept that. And Hamilton should have been insanely motivated in 2022 after what happened in 2021. As Tom Brady is, every time he loses a Super Bowl, what does he do the next year? He brings him right back. Every time. Or just on the cusp of it. Hamilton didn't do that. He was pouting and saying, I'm going to retire, I'm going to quit, I'm not going to talk to the team. You don't want to hear that? Media doesn't cover that. They just treat him like he's a god. We need to treat everyone equally here. We're going to attack this person on everything. So, here we are with Max. We start at Bahrain, yes, second. Sakir, we can't count it. Abu Dhabi, he wins, okay? Second and first in those two starts. And we go to 2021. Here we have, on this list, I have where they officially finished, where Max actually finished, and where he really should have finished. Because if you're going to do racing statistics throughout motorsports history, you have to take bad luck out of it. You have to. It is the reason why so many people in Formula One that are in the sport, that know the sport deeply, will tell you the greatest driver of all time was Jim Clark. And after much data searching and spending years of checking out every race that's ever happened in Formula One and other sports, it's hard to deny that. It's hard to say Jim Clark was not the greatest. And he only had 2 championships. Not many wins, not many poles. Yet he's probably the greatest. You have to look deep into the statistics. You have to take out bad luck. He had a lot of bad luck. Plus, he had Colin Chapman's car. Incredible, innovative, but didn't hold together very well. So, Max Verstappen, Bahrain Grand Prix. He finished second. As we know, with a couple laps to go, he passes Hamilton. They penalize him. They tell him you got to give the position back. He didn't give the position back in a great spot. The way he did it on the backstretch, not good for Verstappen. As he did in 2022 with Leclerc, different part of the track. He should have been going for Leclerc in the second DRS zone after turn 1, 2, 3, and he kept going for him in the first one. So he's got to study that track a little more. But that's neither here nor there. The fact is, yes, Verstappen used the extra road outside of turn 4 to make that pass on Hamilton. But it was the same piece of track that Hamilton used 29 times during the race. 29 times. Someone's got a great video of it. And someone in the Formula One world had calculated he had gained 7 seconds in those 29 times he used that extra space. That may be a bit too much. And heck, even if he gained 1 second or 2 seconds, that was huge because of how close Verstappen and Hamilton were at the end of that race. Even getting 1 second changes the outcome of that race. Max should have absolutely won Bahrain.
Seconds inside your... Okay, copy Lewis, I'll let you judge the pace.
Says that there's a win. Imola, of course, he wins. Portuguese, he comes second, though he got completely screwed on both the pole and the fastest lap by going about a millimeter beyond the white line for the pole and for the fastest lap. Both of them he deserved. But second place, for sure, Hamilton was much faster. Spanish, he got the second. Monaco, of course, he won. Azerbaijan, he retired in real life. Well, everybody in the world knows he should have finished first. The thing that Max fans will forget, they'll say, well, there's 25 points Max should have gained. No, wrong. It's 7. Hamilton was in third at the time of the accident. He would have certainly passed Perez and gotten to second place, and Max would have just easily dozed off and won the race. So really, it should have been Max first, Hamilton second. That's how I have it in my data for that Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Of course, crazy things happen. Hamilton looked like Hamilton was going to win, and then he has the magic brakes problem, and Perez goes on to win. But Max, of course, in a perfect world, wins that race, no problem. He wins France, he wins Styria, he wins Austria, wins the British Sprint. British Grand Prix, of course, no start in my statistics. He should have won that. He was going to win that race. Hamilton knew it. That's why he shoved the nose in there going into Gops. That accident we can talk about later, but it's a no start for sure. Hungarian Grand Prix, again, a no start. That was a race where really Red Bull should have changed what they did with the tires. They should have brought him in, put him on tires. That we could do a whole video on that particular race, but not to Max's doing. The accident that happens on lap 1, he gets crashed into by Bottas, and everybody was crashing on that one. So, and his car was damaged the rest of the race. He did bring it home in 9th, battle with the Haas's, but really that's a no start because we have no idea what he would have done in a clean race. Belgium, of course, he won. The Netherlands, of course, he won. The Italian Sprint, he got second. The Italian Grand Prix, I count that as a no start because before we even get into whose fault it was in the chicane, Max had a very slow pit stop. That's not his fault. He should have been way ahead of Hamilton. He would have finished surely on the podium in that race, probably even second. But the pit stop puts him back and puts him next to Hamilton when Hamilton comes out. And that accident, I'm sorry, in the same way he crashed in Brazil in 2022, if a guy is on the inside of you, even not fully, if he's on the inside of you, especially on the tightest corner in Formula One, which is that second turn of the chicane in Monza, you have to give him room. You have to. We can call it a racing incident, but I'm not going to count that as a start. It's another race. Max very likely gets on the podium, probably gets second. Doesn't win, but it's up there. We can debate that forever of whose fault it was. The FIA said it was Max. I disagree, and I know some major Hamilton fans that also disagree on that one. But I'm one that actually believes the British crash was more of a racing incident. I'm fine with letting them have really dangerous racing. But I didn't even want Hamilton to get a penalty for the British Grand Prix. But you have to admit, yeah, Max was going to win like he won the sprint race. Russian Grand Prix, second. Turkish Grand Prix, second. USA, of course, he won. Mexico, he won. Brazilian Sprint, second. Brazilian in the race, second. Hamilton was incredible that weekend, no question. Absolutely phenomenal. Although all of his passes were at the end of the straight. So I don't know why people thought that was one of the best drives they've ever seen. I'm sorry. if he's making all the passes on the straight, it's not that impressive. There was one pass he made in Gasly in the race at turn 5. That was impressive, yes. But second there in Brazil, second in Qatar, second in the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. That crazy race with so much to talk on. Hamilton was incredible that weekend. And then, of course, this is a race where in real life, Max gets first. In my stats, Max gets second. Hamilton obviously deserved the win in Abu Dhabi. He did not deserve the championship. He deserved the win. It's that Max should have already had the championship wrapped up if there was any evenness in the luck that they dealt with. And check out my video on the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. I go over many aspects no one goes over, and I go over every race in 2021. Okay, now we go to 2022. Bahrain, he's about to finish second. Car breaks down right at the end of the race. So he would have finished second. Saudi Arabia, he wins. Australian Grand Prix was going to finish second. The car broke down again. Easily was going to finish second. Imola, great battle with Leclerc, win. Imola, win. Miami race, win. Spanish Grand Prix, Leclerc was going to win that race. So in my data, Leclerc wins the race. Max actually finished first, but he should have finished second. Monaco, third. Finished third. There's nothing really to glean from that. Azerbaijan, the win. Canada, the win. British Grand Prix. This was a really complicated one because really, I feel like Max would have easily won that race, right? He gets the lead at the beginning of the race.
It gets away well, as does Lando Norris, as does Lewis Hamilton, who's already ahead of Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen.
Then they do the restart, and he's behind Sainz there. Then he forces Sainz into a mistake when he comes back at him. Sainz goes off in the Maggots-Beggots complex.
Ooh. Sainz going off onto the grass there. I thought he recovered it, but he hadn't recovered it sufficiently.
Makes a mistake. Max goes into the lead. He was going to win that race, or at least get on the podium. But it was too early in the race. When something happens too early in the race, I'm not going to predict, Max would have won. Probably would have, but for the fairness of history, I can't just say, he's going to win. He might have made a mistake. Who knows? Unlikely, but you don't know. So with the damage that Max had from running over, what was it, a piece from Gasly or Norris?
Verstappen is very slow. Either he's got off the track or he's got a problem with the car because Carlos Sainz, in 2 laps ago, lost the lead to Max Verstappen, is now going to retake the lead, and the crowd absolutely loving that.
Puncher, we think puncher.
He finished 7th. But I can't count that. I have to put it as a no start. We don't know what would have happened. But he very likely would have won, or at least got second, something like that. And then, of course, Ferrari screws over Leclerc. That's a whole other thing. Austrian Sprint first. Austrian Grand Prix, he actually finished second. But in my data, he finishes third because Carlos Sainz's car broke down. And he was definitely going to finish second. So Max gets bumped back to third on that one. Wins France, wins Hungary, wins Spa, wins Dutch, wins Italian. And it is here that I should go over something I didn't hear anyone talk about. Me and Peter Windsor were texting back and forth a lot during these weeks. But Max Verstappen broke an interesting record that is not officially a record, but it is something I went back every single driver in the history of Formula One to look at, find what is comparable. Max started 10th in the Hungarian Grand Prix, won the race. Started 13th in the Belgian Grand Prix, won the race. Won the Dutch Grand Prix from pole, but the next race, Italian Grand Prix, started 7th, won the race. Looking for who did anything close to this in the entire history of Formula One? You have to go back to Alain Prost, 1990, 13th one, 4th one, 5th one, which is certainly not as good. And then you have to go further back to 1959, Bruce McLaren. Yes, the man that created McLaren. 1959 U.S. Grand Prix started 10th, won the race. You go to the next season, 1960 Argentine race, the very next race in his career, started 13th, won the race. And then the next race was Monaco, started 11th, won the race. So Max, I would say that's even better than Bruce McLaren. And he could have done it at Singapore. Max Verstappen could have, but see what happened in that race. So there's another record nobody talks about that Max won. Singapore. This was a really tough one. I swear that it seemed like, and from knowledge I have inside the team, they were trying to not have him win the championship in Singapore. They wanted him to win it in Japan, Honda, all that connection. There's no connection to Singapore. And if you remember, Max was fighting for the pole. At least was going to get in the top 3, as he always does. And they didn't fuel his last run. They screwed up on the fuel. How can they make such a mistake like that? It's like, come on. Something's at work there. So he ends up starting 7th. Then in the race, falls back to 12th. And then got all the way up to 3rd, or about to get to 3rd. But he went for that pass on Norris, and the car bottomed out. And if the track is perfect, in a perfect world, he's not going to bottom out there. He knows how to make a pass better than anybody in the world. Car bottoms out, has to turn around, all that comes back in the pits, fights all the way back and finishes 7th. But really, he was going to get on the podium in that race if that bottom out didn't happen. And especially he was going to probably win the race if it weren't for the team screwing up his qualifying. So, I mean, that one, there was some things he did that you could tack him on. So, okay, we'll put 4th to 7th somewhere in there where he actually should have finished. So it's but the only time he hasn't been on the podium. I mean, that's really the only time. And that one, I'm sorry, it's too much stuff happened out of his control that really should have been on the podium, or maybe won the race. Japanese, he won. USA, he won. Mexico, he wins. Brazilian sprint, the team put him on the road. What did the team putting him on mediums for? Everybody went for softs, except was it Latifi went on the mediums in the sprint race, and Max. But, I mean, he said that the car wasn't fast enough, but he held the lead for that long with the slower tires. Those tires should have been good till later on, and he held the lead for 2/3 of the race in that Brazil sprint. So he certainly would have finished top 3, maybe even 2nd. And then in the actual Brazilian Grand Prix, he finishes 6th, but he has that accident with Lewis, which I can't believe, even more than Monza, that they blamed Max for that. He's on the inside. Hamilton, give him room. Why is it people think Max is the bad guy? Why is it Max can get into a fight with every other driver on the grid and it's clean and it's fun? Outside of Ocon at that corner a couple of years ago, a race Max should have won. And, of course, Hamilton wins it. Max is so friendly and so fun with all the other drivers and has clean fights. It's only Hamilton. And then people always blame Max. Maybe it's Hamilton. It's like Taylor Swift writing a million songs about her ex-boyfriends, about how terrible they are. Maybe, Taylor, it's you. But discussion for another time. And then, of course, last race of the season he won. So when you look at this run, what actually is the data that we have? Well, let's look at it. Uncredited starts. We have the 2 in 2020, 19 in 2021, and 21 in 2022. That's 42 starts. Max won 26 of those races. 26. 29 of 48 if you count the sprint races. And first or second, nobody looks at this. It was just look at podiums. Look at first or seconds. 38 of 42. First or second. 43 out of 48 with sprint races. And podiums, 40 of 42. And I'm only counting a non-start in the British Grand Prix. I'm counting the Singapore and counting Brazil. And that's the only ones. In 2021, he was perfect. 40 of 42 every time he goes out. And nothing crazy happens. He gets on the podium. 45 of 48 with sprint races. Poles, 20 of 45. Fastest laps, 13 of 43. Sometimes fastest laps couldn't count. That's why these numbers are different. Something like the British Grand Prix, there's no way you could get a fastest lap. No chance. Hat tricks, 5 of 42. Grand slams, 2 of 41. No perfect races. Perfect race, I have a different category, and you'll see why later. Pole, win, fastest lap, lead every lap, and you win by 2 minutes. Or a lap. Won by a lap or won by 2 minutes. And, of course, he won both championships. 2021, he really should have had it wrapped up races before. All the bad luck that happened. We got to listen about Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi had nothing to do with it. He should have won it easily. And 2022, of course, he had it wrapped up a long time ago. So now let's rank this chunk of time for Max Verstappen against the greatest of all time that we've seen in terms of runs. So let's move this box up a bit and see what we get. Okay. Lewis Hamilton. Let's start right there with Lewis Hamilton. This is his second run. This is the 2018 through 2021 run, which was phenomenal by Lewis. If we look at this and compare it to Max, we have 35 of 70 wins to starts, 35 of 73 with the sprint races. It's about half. Well, with Max is more than half by a little bit of a chunk there. Okay, Max has got him. First or second, 52 of 70, 53 of 73 with the sprint races. Max has got him by a long run there. Podium, 60 of 70. Very good. But again, Max, 40 of 42, 45 of 48 with the sprint races. Poles, 29 of 70. Solid, heading towards half. Poles, 20 of 45, just about half. Fastest laps, 21 of 70 with 30%. 13 of 43. It's again about exactly the same. Hat tricks, 5 of 70. Ooh. Max, 5 of 42. Grand slams, 1 of 70. Max, 2 of 41. Nobody had perfect races. And Lewis, only 2 of the 3 full seasons in this run won the championship. Max went 2 for 2. So Lewis cannot compete with this run. And everybody thinks, oh, how dominant was Lewis 2018. No, in this particular run, because in 16 and 17, there were shaky moments. But this is, I was looking for the best moments of Lewis. From Silverstone in 2018 through 2021, this cannot compare. And here's the thing that not enough people pay attention to. Lewis had a fully dominant car in 2019 and 20. Ferrari was good enough with 2018, and Red Bull was right up with Mercedes in 2021. But in 19 and 20, Mercedes was unbeatable. This is a recurring theme here. Max has never had a dominant car. 2021, it was dead equal to Mercedes, here or there. Close enough that you can talk in terms of history that is about the same. It's never going to be exactly the same. And in 2022, this is why I'm so happy Perez didn't get second in the championship. It would get lost too much as we get further into history that this Red Bull was not the dominant. Every time we got to a qualifying session, Ferrari was right there. Every practice session, Ferrari was right there. At the end of the season, Mercedes was right there. And Perez was always battling with George and with Lewis and with Leclerc and Sainz for second place in the championship. The Red Bull was not a dominant car, not even close. And Max did this in a car that's not dominant. It pretty much is the greatest season ever by a car that wasn't a dominant car. He broke the wins record, of course, with more races, but percentage-wise, it was almost with Ascari. With a car that wasn't dominant. It's ridiculous what Max Verstappen did in 2022. And people aren't spending nearly enough time on that because they make it like, well, the Red Bull's better. No, it's equal. It's maybe a little bit better, but it's certainly not dominant like Ferrari in 02 and 04, or Lewis has had most of his Mercedes career. So Max beats this run. Okay, let's go to the next run, which is Lewis's first run, better run, 2014 through 2017. At the beginning of it, Bahrain, 3 races in. So all 14, 15, 16, and 3 races into 17. That was an incredible run by Lewis, but let's look at it. 32 wins of 58, not as good. Not as a little bit more than half. It's about the same. 47 of 58 sounds incredible for first or seconds, but no. 38 of 42. Podiums, 54 of 58 sounds impossible to beat, but of course Max does. 40 of 42, 45, 48 beats it. Poles, 32 of 62, a little more than half. Okay, so Hamilton was a little bit better qualifier. Fastest laps, 20 of 59, about a third, right? About the same, or 13 of 43. Hat tricks, 9 of 58. That is better than Max. But he had a dominant car in 15 and 16, and for 14, 15, 16, 3 of these years, Lewis Hamilton had a fully dominant car, unbeatable. And his stats are only comparable, or still not quite as good, as Max Verstappen. 3 to 58 on Grand Slams. Not about the same. That's all the same. And Lewis, of course, did not win the 2016 season. Now, in my stats, for the Hamilton fans out there, I give him the win in Malaysia. Of course I give him the win in Malaysia. And he gets second at Monaco. But other things that happened with Rosberg, he beats him in my data by 1 point, and I use a different system, the old 10-8-6-5-4-3-2-1 system. I'm sorry, but Lewis does not win the 2016 season, even when I give him the win in Malaysia. But he does win in 2007, and that's another discussion that Lewis fans that are pissed about 2021. Your battle is not Max and Michael Massey in 2021. Your battle to march on the street, and I would do it with you, is what happened to the Brazilian Grand Prix in 2007. That is the question. As much as it was amazing to see Kimi come back from 17 points out and win with 2 races to go, and as much as I can point to Lewis Hamilton beaching his car into the sand in China and throwing his championship away, he still should have won. And in my data, he gets 5th in Brazil, and he wins the championship. So Lewis Hamilton is an 8-time champion in my stats. So as much hate as I give Lewis Hamilton, I have him as an 8-time champion. But it's not 2021, and it's not 2016. It's 2007. That is the one that Lewis Hamilton fans need to investigate, because we've never gotten an answer what actually happened. There was a lot of controversy going on, inter-team, of course, with Alonso. What happened there? He deserved that 07 championship, a rookie championship, which only Jacques Villeneuve in 1996 has ever come close to doing it. But that would have been an incredible accomplishment. Only someone like Marc Marquez and almost Valentino Rossi in his first season, 2000. Very, very rare you ever hear that in sport. That's the one to complain about, not 2021 and Michael Massey and this freaking safety car. That's not the one to complain about. But God forbid people actually study history and research it, and they keep obsessing about 2021. So with 3 dominant years, 55 of these 58 starts in a dominant car, Max still easily beats Lewis Hamilton, even with no races in a dominant car. So now Sebastian Vettel. Singapore 2010 through the 2013 season, which of course he had a totally dominant car in 2011 and 2013. Let's compare. 34 to 61 wins, a little more than half. 26-42, better. 44 to 61 in first to seconds, Max kills him. 49 of 61 podiums, sounds amazing, but of course Max kills him. Poles, 28 of 63, not quite half. 45, not quite half. 16 of 62 fastest laps, very comparable. 13 of 43. Hat tricks, 7 of 61. 5 of 42, very comparable. Grand Slams, 4 of 61. 2 of 41. Vettel's a bit better there. No perfect races. And, of course, Vettel won all 3 titles. So, again, on the first to seconds and the podiums, Max kills Vettel's incredible run that we are such a fan of him for during this period. And 2 of the seasons were in a dominant car, which Max didn't have. And people need to remember how dominant that Red Bull was in 11 and 13. So, Max wins again. So let's up the ante a little more. How about Michael Schumacher? Yes, Michael Schumacher. Why not? The incredible run that Michael had. And specifically from the end of 1999, when he came back after the accident he had in Silverstone and missed most of 1999, was it Mika Salo came in? So the end of 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004. And he had a dominant car in 2002 and 2004. And the 2002 and 2004 Ferrari was about as dominant as a car as you'll ever see in Formula One history. So we got 84 races to work with. Now we had 49 wins out of those 84. Pretty incredible. More than half of the wins, but that's what Max did. Okay, the era that we always obsessed about of dominance, Michael Schumacher's dominant era, Max is keeping pace with that. 26-42. First or second, 64 of 84, Max kills him. 38 of 42, much better. Podiums, 70 of 84, Max has only missed out on 2, and they're both debatable. Poles, 42 of 87, right in the mark of half. 20 of 45. Similar. Fastest laps, 29 of 84, 13 of 43, somewhat similar, comparable. Of course, different eras, different times, as long as it's somewhat comparable. 14 of 84 hat tricks. Now that's amazing by Michael. 3 Grand Slams in 84, 2 to 41. Max has actually got Michael Schumacher in Grand Slams. And then perfect races. Actually, Michael had none. It's very hard to have them in the modern era. But Michael won all 5 of these championships in this period, which is incredible. 2001, 2, 3, 4. Max has won his 2. So what Max is doing is completely comparable, maybe certainly a tick better, because he hasn't had a dominant car, to the era of Michael Schumacher. How many people are talking about that? Because that's what Max Verstappen is doing right now. It's comparable to Michael Schumacher. Completely. It's slightly better. Now let's go up. Let's up the ante. Yes, the man I idolize, the man so many people idolize so much. Ayrton Senna da Silva. The run of Senna, 88, 89, 90, and 91. This is the period that made Ayrton Senna the legend that he is. Maybe missing a couple of races before and after, of course, Monaco in 84, Donington Park in 93. But this is the era where he gets all his stats, is this 4-year period in the McLaren. 2 of those years were unfathomably dominant. 88, we all remember, McLaren is going to win every single race, except Enzo Ferrari dies before the Italian Grand Prix, goes up to heaven, makes a deal with God, and makes sure both McLarens are out of the race, so Ferrari can win. And what a 1-2 fashion. It's the most unbelievable. It'll make people religious that don't believe in religion on that season. That Ferrari wins right after Enzo Ferrari dies. But 88, McLaren is completely dominant. 89, again, completely dominant, but Senna, of course, had a historic teammate in Prost, another all-time driver. So that hurt, where Max has not had that yet. So it's 2 knocks against Senna with the dominant car in these stats, but it's for him that he had a completely incredible teammate that he was fighting with. But let's look at these. 31 of 59, more than half the wins. Of course, Max, solidly more than half the wins. First or second, 40 of 59. That's 2/3. Max Verstappen destroys Senna. 38, 42, 43, or 48, whatever we want to use. Podiums, 47 of 59. Of course, Max Verstappen destroys Senna in that one. Poles. Now, Senna was the king of poles. 44 of 64. Destroys Max in poles. Fastest laps, though. Senna was not a fastest laps guy. at all, even though he was the quickest driver of all time. 10 of 62. Prost was really the fastest laps guy. 10 of 62, 13 of 43. Max beats him. Hat trick, 6 of 59. Max is comparable, even slightly better, 5 of 42. Grand Slams, 3 of 59. 5% of the time, right there with Grand Slams of Max, 2 of 41. That's all comparable. No perfect races. And of course, in my data, Senna wins the 89 championship for many reasons. So he won all 4 championships, and Max has won his 2. So it's completely comparable, if not better, because Senna used to make a lot of mistakes. We kind of forget that, but there were times he made a lot of mistakes, passing people or just screwing up and crashing. Max doesn't do that. He just never does it, even though people like to point, oh, well, he makes mistakes and crashes. No, when? In his rookie season, and even then, it was debatable every crash he had. I'm as big of a Senna fan as anyone you'll find, but what Max is doing the past 2.5 years is absolutely comparable and slightly better than even Senna's greatest run. It's that freaking good. And people need to pay attention to it. So let's up the ante a little more. Juan Manuel Fangio, arguably the greatest driver of all time. He's certainly in the top 3, I think, for me. And I think should almost be, specifically in anybody's data, be a rule, be in the top 3. So we look at from France in 1953, most of that season, 54, 1955, 1956, 1957. Now, in all this time, Fangio only had a dominant car really in 55. And back then, there was a lot of reliability. So look, 56 is a million things I had to change up on what happened. And also, Fangio wins 1950 in my data. So Fangio is a 6-time champion, not a 5-time champion. And please remember that Fangio won 4 different teams. But in these seasons we're looking at, he was in 3 different teams. And he won all 4 championships in the full seasons that we're looking in this run. Okay, 19 of 30 wins. Incredible. Well, more than half. 26 of 30 to first and seconds. Now finally someone has a run that's comparable to Max Verstappen. 26 of 30, 38 of 42. Max is still better. He's had more races and still only missed 4. Podiums, 27 of 30, 40 of 42. He's still beating Fangio. He missed 3, misses 2. But very, very comparable, obviously. There's so many factors to dish in here. Poles, 19 of 33. 19 of 45 up. Fangio's got him. And Max just misses out on poles here and there. Fastest laps, 14 of 33. Just less than half. Certainly beats Max. Hat tricks, 5 of 30, 5 of 42. Beats him there. No Grand Slams. But overall, this is where you have to say, okay, Max is having a better run than Schumacher's greatest time and Senna's greatest time. That's how good this is. But we have run into Fangio, and Fangio's run here from 53 through 57 is unbelievable. But I digress. It's not the greatest run. It may not even be the second greatest run. Alberto Ascari, 51, 52, 53. As much as we want to talk about the award for what would have happened had they not died, there's a lot of people we can talk about. Most people go to Senna, because with the Williams being so incredibly good, end of 94, of course, 95, 96, 97, he's going to win 5, 6 championships, who knows. At the end of 94 would have been an incredible battle. But really the award goes to Ascari, because at least we had enough of Senna. We had 10 years of Senna to know and more. Ascari, goodness, how good could he have been? Look at this run. He had a dominant car in 52, 53, yes, but still, 14 of 19 wins. 16 of 19 first and seconds, which Max actually beats. 17 of 19 podiums. Max has done double the races and still only missed 2 podiums. But poles, 13 of 20, 10 of 20 fastest laps, 8 of 19 hat tricks, insane. 6 of 19 Grand Slams, insane. And 3 perfect races in only 19. And of course, he won both championships. This is an astounding run. And of course, he has the record in that 1952 season where he should have won every single race. And that continued in the next season. And that's where a lot of these stats, Vettel just be winning 9 races in a row in 2013. He was beating Ascari's record. His name pops up whenever you talk about various stats. People hear his name. They go, who's Ascari? How come I've never heard of him? He only won 2 championships. That's how ridiculously good Ascari was. Enzo Ferrari became too close with Ascari, and when he died, that's really when Enzo became more of an a-hole, because he said, I just can't be nice to my drivers and become friends with them, because then they die too much. Although Enzo didn't care when they died, but he said, I can't become friends with them because then they die. He loved Ascari like a son. But is it the greatest run ever? Nope. It's Jim Clark. Another reason to believe Jim Clark is the greatest driver of all time. Again, you have to take out the bad luck to see how good this run was. 1962 Belgium, Last 6 starts in that season, 63, 64, and 65. 21 wins out of 26 races. It's completely ridiculous. First or second, 23 out of 26. Podiums, 24 to 26, which again, this is what Max is doing. Even better. With his first or seconds and podiums is completely historic. We've never seen anything like what Max is doing in terms of that. But wins 21 of 26 in these 3.5 seasons or so. It's incredible. Poles, 23 poles out of 34 chances. 20 fastest laps out of 33 fastest laps. 10 hat tricks, 9 grand slams, 9 out of 26, and a perfect race. And 2 or 3 titles. That's as crazy. As dominant as this was, 64, if you want the most controversial race in F1 history, it is Mexico, final race of the 1964 season. That is the most controversial, crazy ending. It makes 2021 Abu Dhabi look like baby gum. It's nothing. That is truly the most insane ending of a championship, is at 64. And Clark was leading the race. He was going to win the championship. Car breaks down with a couple laps to go. And then all kinds of other things happen. And I should mention that Jim Clark only finished second once. One of the most incredible stats in Formula One history. Meaning pretty much Jim Clark won every race unless something crazy out of his control happened. That's how good he was. Finished second once. So when you look at that, you say, okay, well, Max is definitely not pulling Jim Clark. But that's how incredible it actually is. Almost unprecedented, except for when you look at Ascari, Fangio, Clark. Not Lewis Hamilton, not Michael Schumacher, not Ayrton Senna. You got to go back to Fangio, Ascari, and Clark to find someone who's done it better. So you have to divide someone's career up into 3 different categories if you're really going to have a discussion about who's better. And these categories are, of course, your statistics in a totally dominant car. That's one. Your statistics in a car capable of winning races, but not championships. And then seasons where you have arguably the best car, capable of winning races and the championship, but it's not dominant. That's Verstappen this year and last year. That's Hamilton last year, where Hamilton this year would be in this category, car capable of winning races, but not championships. You have to split them up in these 3 categories and then compare those. That is the only way you can really talk about who's better than who and comparable statistics, and then put the percentages with it. So if we look at Verstappen, seasons with a car capable of winning races but not championships, most of Verstappen's career is this, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That is what he was in. And I felt Verstappen was arguably the best driver in the grid since the middle of 2016. I mean, basically, as soon as they put him in the Red Bull in Spain and he wins the race, I was like, see, there he is. He's right there. He's just as good as anybody. And it's been that way since. He just hasn't had the car to really show it. He showed it in Brazil in 2016, that's for sure. And hopefully something like that will happen again where he can show himself in a heavy rain race. So you look at these stats, and I've got Schumacher, Hamilton, Senna, and Sebastian Vettel just to show where people fit. And I've done all the time and research to go through all the data and all the races for everyone. Hamilton has 6 seasons in this category, 09, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 2022. We couldn't win the championship. We couldn't win races. And I'm real nice, Hamilton fans. I'm very nice. I gave you 2010, okay, even though he actually could have won the championship in 2010 if he was the GOAT. But I'm being nice. We'll give him 2010. We'll put him in this category. So 10% of the time, Verstappen won in this. Very comparable to Hamilton, Schumacher, and Vettel. Senna. This is where Senna makes his mark and why so many people are crazy about him, me included. It's what he did in not great cars. That was really impressive. 14 wins out of 80, 17.5%. Solidly better than everybody else. So everybody else is almost exactly the same. Poles, 22.5% of the time. You give Senna a car that can't even win the championship, and he's still going to get pole. Where Verstappen and Schumacher, not good. Verstappen actually is in the worst here in this category. Only 3% of the time he gets pole with that. Fastest lap, Schumacher wins, but everybody else is comparable. Basically 10, 11%. Podiums, Verstappen is the best. Over 50% of the time, Verstappen gets on the podium. if you give him a car that might have a chance of winning the race and definitely doesn't have a chance to win the championship, he gets on the podium more than half the time. That's an incredible stat. And it's comparable with Schumacher and Vettel, but slightly better. You look at Hamilton, only 32% of the time. Okay, Hamilton fans? Only less than a third of the time Hamilton gets on the podium. Why is that? Maybe ask yourself that. And look, Senna's not up there either. 37% of the time he actually got on the podium. It seemed like Senna either won the race or he crashed if he had that kind of a car. But this is where Senna makes it up. 2 of those times, 2 seasons out of these 5, he got second place in the championship with a car that really was not capable of winning the championship and got a third place on these 5 seasons. Schumacher 3 times got third place. Impressive. Hamilton, this is where Hamilton fails. 6 seasons he's been in this category. He has not finished third. This year, 2022, is in this, and he finished in 6th place. Maybe, you could say, well, it should have been 5th. Okay, 5th, 6th. It's not third or second. Senna finished second twice. So Hamilton fails there, and Verstappen is completely comparable. Okay, now let's look at seasons with a totally dominant car. Well, we can't with Verstappen. He's never had a totally dominant car. But since Hamilton has had 5 seasons in a totally dominant car, which is why the 100 wins and the 100 poles mean as much to me as breadcrumbs on the floor. He's had 5 seasons in a totally dominant car. Ascari, Senna, Fangio, Schumacher, Vettel only had 2. Clark only had 1. Maybe you could debate 65, but not really. Everyone I've talked to in that era says really only 63 had a truly dominant car. And look at the stats. Ascari destroys everyone. There's not many races to go by, but he's all there. Clark. It's Clark and Ascari that are destroying these stats. Senna, pole 81% of the time. He got pole, incredible. But fails a little bit in podiums, only 72% of the time. Where everybody else, look at this. Schumacher, 91% of the time. 32 out of 35 races. You give Schumacher a dominant car, he's on the podium. He's going to be there. And I can only imagine Max should be at that. So this is just to give you an idea. Look at some of these. Now here's this other category. Seasons with arguably the best car, capable of winning races and the championship, but it's not dominant. This is Verstappen the last 2 years. And this is Hamilton in 2007, 2008, 2017, 18, and last year, 21. 17, 18, Ferrari was right there with it, and Ferrari screwed up 17, why Vettel didn't win, and Vettel really screwed up, and Ferrari in 2018. So the team-wise couldn't compete with Mercedes. In the same way that Verstappen 2022, Ferrari was as good, but the team sucked, and the team made a mistake. I guess consistent. Ferrari always makes mistakes all the time. So that's really why Red Bull ends up winning the championship by a lot. It was not the car, it was the team and the way they handled it. So there's a lot more data here. Okay, this is where you get to see why Vettel just not in that class of Schumacher, Fangio, and Hamilton, and Senna, and likely not Verstappen when it's all said and done. Red across the board. But look at Verstappen. We're talking the greatest drivers of all time here. 62.5% of the time, he wins in a car that is arguably the best car. Everybody else is less than half. Hamilton, only 36.8% of the time. Bad with Vettel, 25% of the time. Poles, actually Schumacher, the worst in this category by a long shot. He had the most seasons, though, in this category. So many seasons in this category, 9. But still, not great data there. Clark and Fangio, fastest lap, if anybody cares about fastest lap so much. But now look at this again. Podiums. Senna, 75%. Hamilton, 71%. Fangio, 65%. Schumacher, 2/3. Clark had a lot of reliability, and I gave him some wins, but it's tough to tell. Vettel, 53%. Verstappen, 95%. 38 of the 40 races, and almost 95% when you add the sprint races, if you wanted to. It's unbelievable what he does with a car that is not a totally dominant car. And he's won both championships. Schumacher only won 5 of 8. Clark shockingly only won 2 of 4. And Hamilton, 4 of 5. I, of course, give him the 2007 championship. This stat is incredible. The podiums with a not dominant car. In the same way, Senna may be the best at a crappy car. And Hamilton, we think, is the best with the most dominant car. But actually, when you look at the stats, he's definitely not. That would be Ascari or Clark. Verstappen is the best with a car that is arguably the best, but not the best and not a crappy car. But I almost love to see Verstappen more in a crappy car. We might see that next year. So this is comparing it to history. Verstappen absolutely deserves to be in the discussion already with some of the greatest drivers. With the GOATs, he's not there, but he's in that discussion. There's some things he's doing that no one's ever done. Now, let's look at more stats. Let's look at more specific stats. In terms of teammates, this is something that needs to be paid attention to with Hamilton, of course, losing to Russell, the kid. He has lost 3 of the 16 seasons to his teammate. Alonso, 3 of 18. Fangio, only 1 of 7. Clark, only 1 of 8. Senna, who had a historic teammate for 2 seasons, only lost 1 of 10. Verstappen, 2 of 8. Ascari never lost to a teammate. And Schumacher, this is where Schumacher shines massively. 15 seasons, never lost to a teammate. Now, of course, there's luck involved in who his teammate is. He only had Barrichello, who was good, but not incredible. Kind of like Hamilton having Bottas or Rosberg. Good, not incredible. Not someone you're going to talk about in the top 25 ever. But still, 15 seasons, never losing a teammate. Incredible. But you look back down here, and Vettel, 3 of 13, and Piquet, 3 of 13. Brabham, Jack Brabham, 3-time champion. Created his own team, won the championship. 6 of 13, not good. Niki Lauda. I'm sorry, but that's terrible. Niki Lauda, 6 of 12 times lost to his teammate. And Nigel Mansell, 6 of 12, lost to his teammate. Really not good. Hamilton, 3 different drivers, and almost both times with Button lost. And I'm not counting Alonso there. I'm just counting Button, Rosberg, and now George Russell. Here's another stat to look at. When you have the end of the season, when you have a tight championship, this and other sports, I care about clutch. That's why I love Tom Brady. It's why you love Michael Jordan. What do you do in the clutch? Valentino Rossi, of course. I mean, this is where Rossi destroys Marc Marquez. Marc Marquez is not clutch. Rossi is. Was his whole career. I put him in a tight battle. He's going to win. Ricky Prohl, wide receiver, just made the most clutch catches, even though he never seemed to win. Yeah, it was the team. He always made clutch catches all the time. We always loved the clutch. We loved the clutch guy. And you look at tight championships. In my data, Senna, of course, won 89. All those were really tight battles. Fangio, 50, 51, and 56. He won them all for me. Vettel, 2010 and 2012 are why he will always be of legendary status because of what he did there. But 2018, he choked. Even though Germany wasn't at the end of the season, that was going to be one of the greatest seasons ever. Who's going to be a 5-time champion? That was one of the rare times in all of sports history. You know, Larry Bird versus Magic Johnson. Terry Bradshaw versus Roger Staubach when they both had, 2 titles. You know, it's very, very, very rare that you have possible GOATs in the future going up to see who's get that next step and end the battle for all time. When I predicted that Brazilian Grand Prix in 2008, when everybody was anointing Hamilton as the future, I said, no, the future is Vettel. It was the boldest prediction I've ever made in anything in my life, and I was right for 10 years until that 2018 season. Vettel was the future of the sport for a decade. And then finally, you had to accept that, no, Hamilton is better after that 2018 season. So 2 of 3 there. Verstappen, 1 tight battle, 2021. He's 1 of 1. Schumacher, only 3 of 6. Hamilton, only 3 of 6. 2010, I'm putting 2010 in here. 2010, 2016, 2021. He lost. He's only 3 of 6 when it comes to clutch time. He's not clutch. Neither was Schumacher. I mean, what Schumacher did in 94 and 97 was disgusting. Although he should have won the title in 94 anyway, when you take out bad luck. But still, that was terrible in 94 and 97. 06, that's a tough one to say, but because he drove so well, but other factors were there. But still, 3 of 6 is 3 of 6. And Clark, only 1 of 3. Which makes me want to say he's not the GOAT. But there was so much that happened in the end of 64 that was not his fault. And 62, he was still young, and there were other things with reliability in that season. So it's tough to judge that. But right now, Verstappen is 1 of 1. I wish this season would have gone down more to the wire, but it didn't because Ferrari made too many mistakes. So these are the championship titles, by the way, that I have. Clark has 3 titles, not 2. He definitely deserves 64. Prost has 4. Even though there was other chances he almost had more. It was 4, but it's different. Notice it's different. He won in 84, 85, 86, 93, not 89. Vettel, of course, his 4. Senna has 4 in 10. Fangio, 6 in 7. Just, it's ridiculous. Pretty much won the championship every year he competed. Schumacher actually has the exact same 7 that he does in real life. And Hamilton, 8. 7 of 14, 8 of 16. Schumacher and Hamilton are the champions. Half the time they compete, they seem to win. And of course, you could say, well, Verstappen's only 2 of 8. Yeah, but he went in so young and the team was not what we need to see in the next 5 years because it's a different sport nowadays with how long you stay in the sport. So let's see what happens. Get back to us another 5 years. Total amount of teams won with. This is just something to point out for Fangio's sake. You look at this. Most people win with 1 or 2. And, of course, Hamilton's won with 2, like Prost won with 2, Schumacher's won with 2. But Fangio won with 4. He was only around, really, 7 seasons. He won with 4 different teams. It's just insane. It's insane. And this, just even though we kind of went over this a minute ago, this is just a reminder to put it in perspective. Verstappen has had no seasons in a dominant car. Neither has Alonso. In his 2 championships, there was arguably the best car wasn't dominant. Piquet never had a dominant car either, and he won 3 championships. Emerson Fittipaldi had 1, Hakkinen, Clark, Mansell had 1. Ascari had both. Okay, Brabham 2, Lauda 2, Schumacher 2. Really only 2, though. Schumacher did everything he did with only 2 seasons with a dominant car. Vettel only 2. Fangio really only 2. Senna only 2. Jackie Stewart had 3. So his 3 titles were in seasons where he had a very dominant car. But he won 3 championships. Can't take that away. Prost, which is why I'm not a fan of Prost. 4 seasons he had a totally dominant car and won 4 titles. Hamilton, 5. It's something that needs, when you talk about Hamilton's statistics, you must note that 5 of his seasons he had a dominant car, completely dominant car. And in so many other seasons, he had a car that was arguably the best car in 07 and 08 and in 17 and in 18 and in 2021. He had a car that was capable of winning the championship. That's why you can't just look at plain numbers. There's so much more to it. And for those who are looking at, well, where is Corey's biases? What's the bias? Okay, well, I give you my top 40 drivers of all time. I've always been a Kyle Busch fan, just the way he drives a car. He's won over 200 races. He has won more races than anybody. Well, he won it in the Busch and the Truck Series. Well, that's how Pearson would have had 200. That's how Richard Petty had 200. They raced in everything. So it's comparable. But Kyle Busch, David Pearson, Jeff Gordon, putting some NASCAR people over here. Nelson Piquet, Dario Franchitti, Bobby Unser. Incredible what Bobby Unser actually achieved in his whole career. Raikkonen, Derek Bell, Mika Hakkinen. This is where I have Max currently. He's got a lot to go. As much as he's achieved, he's got a long way to go to keep slowly moving up this list. Because Jimmy Johnson's a 7-time NASCAR champion. 7. The problem with Jimmy is that he hasn't done anything else. A lot of these drivers, like I'd love to see Kyle and Jeff Gordon do other things. Because this is why Pedro Rodriguez is up here. He raced in everything and he was good at everything. How about Dale Earnhardt, 7-time? Okay, so you can go through all these. But this is my top, okay? And to me, you got to put Tazio Nuvolari here because we don't know how good he would have been if we had more data in it. But everybody agrees he was the greatest pre-war driver. So just being the greatest ever for a whole chunk of time, you have to be up at least at 6th. So here, you cannot put Schumacher ahead of Hamilton. You just can't. Hamilton beats him in so many percentage categories. To me, that's your top 5. And the most versatile driver of all time, of course, is Mario Andretti. And I'd say second to him would actually be Mark Donohue. Mark Donohue went to college in my home state of Rhode Island at Brown University as engineering. Yeah, these to me are the best. And this is for all racing. Of course, you've got Montoya in here. You've got Jackie Eakes in here. You got Dan Gurney in here. Tom Christensen, of course, Mr. Le Mans. I wish we could have seen him in other racing. Don't forget what Vettel did in Champion of Championship races. That's why he's got to be in there. If you want to know bias on different things, well, there it is. Okay, Hamilton, I got him 4th all time. It's hard not to put him there. But Max is already at 31. And he's a kid. I told him in 2015, privately, at Helmut Marko's house, I said, you have a chance that your ceiling is Senna. That's how talented I think you are.
This is amazing. Come on, try 3 notes.
I'm like a steamboat, you know?
Yeah. They don't know what this thing does.
And he didn't know, but Senna to me is second. You want to put him third best driver of all time. And right now, Max's trajectory is absolutely to land in this holy top 5, for sure. He just has to keep at it. People need to understand, I'll say it again and again and again, what he is doing right now, this run he is on, is almost unprecedented, especially for firsts and seconds. It's ridiculous. He's otherworldly. He's all time. I just want to go over how many seasons in F1 history came down to the wire. How many seasons were completely drama-filled and had you at your edge of your seat? Because this is the greatest season ever. This is the craziest season ever. This 2021 battle between Max and Lewis. It was unreal. Absolutely Hollywood every week. But you need to look at history, guys. 1950. Now, there were less races, only 6 races back then, but still. Fangio, Farina, take it to the final race. 51. Fangio and Ascari, take it to the final race. 57. Moss and Fangio. Not only them, they go to the end. It's Maserati versus Ferrari in that one. 1958, Moss and Hawthorne take it to the last race. 59, Moss and Jack Brabham take it to the last race. 61, Wolfgang von Trips versus Phil Hill. He's killed. Von Trips is killed. Phil Hill just died a couple of years ago with 2 races to go. At Monza, going into the Parabolica, fighting for the title. 62, Clark pushes Graham Hill to the last race. It's another one. 64, the one I just talked about. It was a 3-way battle in the last race. Clark, Graham Hill, and Surtees. Right to the end, and including what I would say is the greatest drive by a number 2 driver in Bandini, who was at Ferrari. 2 controversies he was involved with to get John Surtees the win. He took out Graham Hill. There's actually video of this at this wacky hairpin they had. And then came into the pits. Ferrari said come in so that he could give the position because Phil Hill was behind him. And Hill passes him on the last lap. So he goes in the pits and makes enough to win the championship. And they were lucky that Clark went out. That's why a lot of people hated Ferrari. It's like, what were they doing here? That race had so much going on. 67, Brabham and Holm, who won the championship, battled in the same car. But not only the same car, because we see that a lot, 2016, the Hamilton and Rosberg. It was the Brabham. It was the Brabham. So Jack Brabham is fighting his teammate in his car. And they were allowed to race. Teammates should always be allowed to race. If Jack Brabham and Holm, Denny Holm were allowed, I mean, come on. Then you always have to allow teammates to race. And Holm won. He beat Brabham for that title. So how about that for drama? 67. 74, Emerson Fittipaldi, Clay Regazzoni go to the final race at Watkins Glen. 76, you all know 76 because Rush, the movie, was about 1976. And I don't even think that was all that exciting. I just feel bad for Lauda. But the last race, how Lauda went out and Mario Andretti winning that race by a lap. Won by a lap. Oh my God, the most underappreciated rain drive of all time. But that season can't compare to these other ones. But they still made a movie on it. 1980, Piquet and Jones. Alan Jones take it to the final race at Watkins Glen. The 3-way battle in 81. Lafitte, Piquet, Reutemann. And this race was at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, the worst racetrack ever in Formula One history, maybe racing history. And next year we go back to Vegas and fix that negative that we put as Americans on Formula One. We gave them that awful track to race for a 3-way battle for the championship. But Piquet won that one. Reutemann and Lafitte kind of choked a little bit. But a 3-way battle. So hopefully we right that wrong in Vegas this next year in 2023. Prost loses it to Piquet in the final race in 83. Prost loses it to Lauda by a half a point in the final race. That's when Lauda came back and won a championship there. 86, we all know that one with Murray Walker when Mansell blows his tire in the final race about to win the title.
Commiseration, sympathy, and all the other appropriate words to the King of Rosberg. He may have been prepared to move over. Hey, look at that! Out there, and velocity, that's Mansell! That is Nigel Mansell! And the car absolutely shattered. He's fighting for control, and you can see what happened. Mansell is out of the race. Now, this could change and will change the World Championship.
What an absolute tragedy for Mansell, obviously.
89, most famous crash in F1 history, Senna and Prost at Suzuka. And then the very next year, Senna and Prost crash again at Suzuka, this time on lap 1. I mean, all these are incredibly tight championships. 94, Schumacher crashes into Hill. Should have been disqualified probably for the whole season. Then he crashes into Villeneuve in 97. This is in the last races of the season. Schumacher, Hill, Schumacher, Villeneuve. And he does get disqualified for it. So when people say, oh, Max is a dirty driver, have you watched even the 90s with Schumacher, let alone Senna and Prost and Piquet and all the stuff he did? Oh, my God. What babies. Absolute babies people are. Thinking Max is that aggressive of a driver. I wish he was more aggressive like he was in his first season. 99, Eddie Irvine almost pulls off a miracle and beats Hakkinen. They both go to the final race. They would have tied on points had Schumacher given Irvine the second place at Suzuka, but Hakkinen wins it. That went right down to the final laps of 99. 2003, Schumacher and Hakkinen go to the final race because as dominant as the Ferrari was in 02 and 04, everybody forgets in 03 they changed regulations and changed different things, changed the point system. That was that year. That went down to the final race. 2005, of course, the season Raikkonen should have won. Alonso really shouldn't even have any championships. 2005 was the most undeserved championship I've ever seen. Alonso didn't deserve that one. But that still went right down to the end. That whole season was crazy, the things that happened to Kimi Raikkonen. 2006, oh my God. Title goes down to the final race after Schumacher's engine blows in Japan. And you look at, to me, the greatest drive of Schumacher's career was that Brazil race. So many things went wrong, and he still got basically to the back bumper of Alonso at the end of that race. It was unbelievable. It showed how incredible Schumacher was. I wish he never came back, really, because that being his last race, even though it was in a loss, it was my favorite drive of his whole career. 2007, three-way battle. We all know Hamilton, Alonso, Raikkonen. This is the one I'm talking about, that Hamilton fans need to investigate what happened. Hamilton should have won the championship that year. And, of course, Kimi coming from 17 points back, which in today's points you have to multiply by 2.5 to get 42.5 points. So Kimi was behind by 42.5 points under the modern system with 2 races to go and wins it, mainly because Hamilton beached it in China. 2008, of course, final corner of the final lap of the final race. That, to me, was the biggest choke drive I've ever seen to win a championship. Hamilton was horrible in that 08 Brazilian race. Gets passed by Vettel in the Toro Rosso, a rookie in a middling car, passes him for 5th place with a couple laps to go, which he needed that 5th place to win the championship, and he gets passed by. Do you think Senna or Fangio or Clark would have let that happen, let a rookie in a middling car beat you in the rain when you have the best car, when you just need 5th to win the championship? I was so disappointed in Hamilton.
And look at this Toyota coming through there, and that's worked out quite well, I believe, for Lewis Hamilton, and putting back out into clear air. Look how close Vettel is then to Hamilton now.
Yeah, he's closing right in on him. Half a second of that last time through.
Now that the two in front of him have done that.
So does Vettel, critically.
Well, Hamilton's still 5th. He's got Vettel behind him. 1.2. Actually, Glock has passed him, and he's 8.5 seconds behind Glock. Critically then, Hamilton's got to keep Vettel behind him now.
Big World Championship.
Hamilton's got a bunch of traffic ahead of him. He's unlapped
He's a
himself.
lap down. He's unlapping himself. He would argue he's entitled to do that. Hamilton lets him through. So he's got to get out of the line. Oh my goodness me! Vettel's taking the place, and that could cost Hamilton the World Championship. And the championship is slipping away from Lewis Hamilton.
And Massa deserved that. But of course, Hamilton's luck, the best luck I've ever seen of anyone, certainly in racing, throughout his career. It started right there. The rain comes right when he needs it, and at the exact intensity he needs it, and he pulls off the pass at the final corner of the final lap of the final race and wins the championship. 2010. 4-way battle. Hamilton, Alonso, Webber, Vettel. Nobody talks about that one, Hamilton fans. He was in that one. He lost that one, too. Vettel wins in incredible fashion. The way he drove at the end of the 2010 season was incredible. That's why he is a legend. And 2012, I mean, you see what Vettel did in Brazil in 2012. It's just, that is the greatest clutch drive I've ever seen. And that's why he'll always be in the top 10 greatest drivers for me, because of what he did in 2010 and 2012. Specifically 2012 in Brazil, he drives back. And Red Bull screws up. Everybody forgets. It's not only the crash of Bruno Senna in lap 1, it's later on that Red Bull screw up the pit strategy, and he still is able to come back and win the championship.
Leader, it has not played out for him. Locking up a brace, and there goes Kimi Raikkonen, wide and off the track.
And was that...
It's a Red Bull! It's a Red Bull! It's Sebastian Vettel in the middle of the track! It's the worst possible scenario for Sebastian Vettel!
Sebastian, some cars are on inters, some cars pitting for inters. We think the rain is not going to get any worse. Massa ahead, box, box, box. Rain light on when you can for inches. Okay, Sebastian, the car's ahead of the position, be careful. Burn your head on right side. Box, box, box. Okay, Sebastian, go down plus 3 Weber, plus 3 Weber. Sebastian, we cannot understand. Your voice is very muffled. We cannot understand. Box, box, box. Box, box, box.
Let's watch Sebastian Vettel's pit stop. They're still running out with the tyres. Eventually they come. That must be seeming like an age. Maybe the Sebastian Vettel.
The blankets and everything.
Yeah, you could maybe see his championship hopes fading away. A lack of communication.
It's a horrible stop for Sebastian Vettel. It all went wrong for Red Bull. He came into the pits, but no tyres were ready for him.
And it's probably because of the radio problems. Sebastian Vettel, we know, has had radio problems, but this is now thrown multiple cats up into a tree full of pigeons here in Interlagos.
Vettel, I believe, come out in about 11th place. So right now, it's Alonso's got what he needs.
You're the world champion! You're the triple world champion, Sebastian Vettel! You are the man! You're a triple world champion!
Oh my God, guys.
Dude, the radio's not working. What are you telling us? We can't hear a thing.
I don't feel him. Yes! Yes, we did it! Let's do everything else! Everything else! Yes!
Yeah, I definitely got that. Definitely got that.
2016, of course, Hamilton tries to push Rosberg back into people, which I was for him with that one. Hey, you got to do what you got to do to win the championship. Niki Lauda didn't like it, but I was fine with it. It went down to the final laps, 2016 did.
Okay, Lewis, this is an instruction. We need 45-1 for the win.
Suggest you guys let us race.
And that is an instruction that's being disobeyed. Yeah.
Lewis, this is Paddy. We need you to pick up the pace to win this race. That's the instruction.
Buddy, I'm actually in the lead right now. I'm quite comfortable.
Target the 45s if we're going to win this.
Right now, I'm losing the World Championship, so I'm not really bothered if I win or lose this race.
And then we get to 2021. So you guys want to see some exciting things in the offseason, want to study some exciting F1? You have a heck of a lot of, like half the seasons in F1 history were incredible and went down to the end. So a lot of research to do. Now, a side topic that has become vital to a conversation about statistics and who's the best and all these debates, very unfortunately, is who the person is. And that shouldn't be the case, but it has become so. Who is Max Verstappen? Well, I don't want to say I know Max Verstappen, but I certainly do know him. If I'm in a room with him, I can go up to him and say, hey, Max, and he'll say, hey, Corey, what's up? And I can ask him a private question about something that happened in a race or his actual opinion on a topic, and he will give me an answer that he will not give to anyone in the media. And it disturbs me and disgusts me greatly how much people do not like him as a person away from the racetrack, what they see in the paddock. on the camera, not in real life. I've been to 10 paddocks. I've spent all 3 days those 10 times. I have partied and hung out with Max at least 10 times. I know who he is off of the camera and who he is away from the track. And here's how I'm going to put it to you. All of you love Daniel Ricciardo, right? I would presume everybody in the world that has not been in a paddock and knows these drivers would put Daniel Ricciardo well ahead of Max.
You gotta put your hands on it.
Or at least ahead of Max in kindness, in how much fun they are, in all these positive traits. They would put Daniel ahead of Max. And I can tell you that they are the same person. They're very much the same. And the proof is there if you actually watch Formula One videos of when they were teammates. And we will now hopefully see this in 2023. Everyone, you love Daniel. He's fun. He's nice. He's the guy you want to be around. That's Max. He's the same kind of guy. There's hardly any difference. And I'm not saying Daniel isn't as fun as you think he is. He is. He's everything you think he is. He is that fun. He is that cool. He is that nice. And another side story, the idea that Ricciardo left Red Bull because he felt the team was focusing on Max because they saw that he was a generational talent and Daniel Ricciardo was not quite that. That to me is a lie. I never saw any ounce of that from Daniel's side, that he thought the team was focusing too much on Max, or that Daniel felt he wasn't good enough to be right there with Max, because he was. Even as Max continually got better and better, Ricciardo was getting better and better. Here's a moment in Daniel's career. This to me is maybe the greatest pass in modern Formula One that is never talked about. 2015 U.S. Grand Prix, which actually I was in the pits for.
Daniel Ricciardo, and this is how he got into the lead here, and it's he manages to get overtaking done very quickly indeed when he needs to. He's squirming all over the place there, Martin, really, really going for it. And Hamilton just goes that little bit wide.
Yeah, Lewis had to get out of it there.
And he's in. Thank you very much. And he is away.
Daniel went to Renault to get money, just as so many in other sports. When you say, well, if he went there, he could win a title, but they see that they have a chance to make a lot of money. They want to do that now and then worry about the championship later. Ricciardo, to me, has always been at least a two-time champion kind of a driver, someone I would take over Fernando Alonso, who really didn't earn either one of the championships he won. He kind of squeaked by with both of them for different reasons. And it's sad that it doesn't look like Ricciardo's ever going to be able to be a two-time champion. But that whole storyline of Ricciardo leaving Red Bull because of that reason, that he felt he wasn't going to be able to match Verstappen and Red Bull was going towards Verstappen, I did not see an ounce of either of those. But Max is the same person, and I wish it was seen more on camera. And maybe the best spot to have seen who Max is as a person was this moment that is completely lost to history, even though it's right there in front of everybody's minds. It is the moment when we all thought the FIA was in bed with Hamilton and screwing the race over to help Hamilton win the 2021 championship, which was minutes before the rest of the world, which happens right to this second I'm talking, thinks that the FIA is in bed with Max and Red Bull against Hamilton, when they said here that the lapped cars were not going to be allowed to pass. And Max, very calmly on the radio, in the most important moment in his life, very calmly jokes and says this.
Cancel that. Lap cars will not be allowed to overtake.
Yeah, of course. Typical decision.
It's classic.
I'm not surprised.
Is there anything in there that seems nervous, that seems angered, seems pissed at the world, feels like a championship which he absolutely deserved is being stolen away from him, even when he had a chance to look like to actually get that just championship back? No. He's completely calm, making a joke. The Red Bull team's making a joke. He's making a joke. Of course they're going to screw us. They always screw us. They're going to screw us. Huh? What are you going to do? I'm going to lose the championship. That right there tells you who Max is as a person. And that message is who I see away from the cameras. And he makes jokes like this all the time. If you actually listen to his whole radio through a race, he talks about what he's going to have for dinner if he makes a pass. It's actually amazing how different Max is from Senna, because Senna was so focused in the car. Max is very relaxed in the car all times, no matter what the case is, even there, in the most stressful moment. probably will ever be in his career, where he feels, oh my God, I might be able to finally, yes, I can win this championship. Oh, they're going to steal it away from me. He's joking. But I've never understood why who you are as a person and what your personal opinions are matter so much in how people judge you on the field. Look at how many people love Tiger Woods, who is off the field. Really terrible in a lot of ways. But we don't care. To me, he's the greatest golfer of all time. To many people, he's the greatest golfer of all time. And also someone that doesn't talk about political and social issues. He broke that color barrier in golf and became the greatest ever without complaining and whining about it. He just did it by being the best in the world at what he did. And people only really rank him and judge him by what he does on the field. Famous people think their voice actually matters, even though it doesn't. I think it's honestly disgraceful that just because many people follow them for one topic, their stances on social and political policies should matter. They shouldn't. Unless you run for office, I don't want to hear what your opinion is. And Max Verstappen takes the route that Michael Jordan took, which is to say absolutely nothing. And that is what all should do. That should be the characteristic that we look for. Not what someone like Lewis or even Vettel, who I love, pushing policies, pushing their opinions on the world when they're not an expert in that topic. I don't see that as anything to look up to. They're a racing driver, or they're a basketball player, or they're a football player. They should stay in their lane. If they want to go into politics, then I would like to hear what their opinion is. Until then, be quiet. It's incredibly narcissistic that we have to hear about a singer's opinion on gun laws. It makes no sense. And the comp for Max Verstappen's character in Formula One history is Senna again. Here is a guy who, during his time alive, was never known as a nice guy. Was known as a tyrant, really, even when he was out of the car in a lot of cases. And people, me included, fell in love with him. He was our hero. And there was no proof and no data that he was some nice guy, some lovable guy, some guy trying to save the world, trying to rid the world of racism, or whatever it may be. He just got in the car and he wanted to be the best. And he wanted to be almost evil inside the car and do whatever he had to do to win. And people loved him. If someone says now, oh, no, you're wrong, Corey. He had the charity. Look what he did with Comas in Spa to save his life. No, he was always known as a nice guy. The Comas thing, we saw it, but it wasn't a major talking point. The charity wasn't really known until after he died. All these things we love about Senna as a person were not really talked about until after. He was seen as the villain when he was driving. Why is it today that Max does one little thing wrong here, one little thing wrong here, like Brazil 2022, he doesn't give sixth place to Perez. And instead of saying, well, it must have been a serious reason, because Max, why wouldn't he do that? There must be a real reason why he didn't. Instead, so many people around the world are jumping off his bandwagon. Oh, I hate Max now. He didn't give sixth place to Perez. I mean, seriously, that's Perez's job. Your job is a number 2 driver. He knows he's a number 2 driver. You have no rights when you're a number 2 driver. Barrichello had no rights when he was with Schumacher. Bottas has had no rights when he's with Hamilton.
Valtteri, it's James. We had a risk with Lewis. Valtteri, it's James. Please abort the fastest lap attempt for the end of the lap. Valtteri, it's James.
Valtteri, this is Toto. Difficult day for you and difficult day for us. Let's discuss it afterwards when we come together, and we'll explain the things.
And that's what you sign up for. You get to be at the top team with the top driver. You don't have any rights. But that's neither here nor there. It's the fact that so many people jumped off the Max bandwagon for that little thing, but are still massive fans of Senna. So I don't understand the hate for Max. First of all, I don't know why it matters who the person is. He is really a down-to-earth, humble guy out of the car when you know him personally. And again, I know how much you all love Ricardo, and you're all right. But Max is the same kind of person, even though it doesn't seem to appear on camera. And to ask me for my massive Marquez versus Rossi video, and really a documentary on Rossi's 25 greatest races, it is an 8-hour video, so you can't upload it to anything but YouTube, except YouTube you can't upload it because of the copyright laws. So you have to ask me for the exact link for it hidden in the internet. But if you are a Rossi fan or want to learn more about MotoGP, that video is your binge watch.